What's going on there, YouTube? And welcome back to another comic book video. This is the channel where we sit down and cover different comic book stories from different comic book companies. Today, we're going to jump back over to Marvel Comics and continue our coverage over the DC New 52 Aquaman series. And we're going to pick up with issue number 5 and 6. This is where we learn a tad bit more about the origin of Atlantis before it fell in the ocean, but also we learn a tad bit more about the origin of Mera as well. So if you do like today's comic book video, please hit that like button down below and also subscribe to the channel for more content to come in the near future. But I do hope you enjoy today's video. So at the opening of this book, we pick up with Aquaman falling out of the sky in the middle of the desert, which honestly makes you wonder why in the world this man just fell in the middle of the desert. Once he does land in the middle of the desert, we see him speak in the way he is acting, telling us that whatever took place before this section, something big must have happened to make him end up here in the middle of the desert. So we know we are about to go back in time. That is when we jump back 12 hours ago. We pick up with Aquaman and Mera in their home in the lighthouse, where Aquaman is having a hard time sleeping because he is thinking back to the monster from the trench, that those monsters and the connection they could have with ancient Atlantis really does bother him. Except when Mera wakes up to see what is wrong with him, that is when Aquaman gets a call from Commander Clay. They met briefly in our last video, but he says that they found some kind of artifact from ancient Atlantis embedded in the walls of cocoons that Aquaman brought from the trenches that belonged to those monsters from our last video. Clay tells Aquaman that when they tried to pull out the artifact, it began to let out some high pitch that shattered the glass and hurts everyone's ears. We then jump back to the present day, to Aquaman still in the desert, but we see things getting worse for him. He has to pull out some kind of shard out of his leg, which of course now he has a bleeding wound. Also that he needs water, because if he doesn't get some water soon, that he could die. But also he does find his trident and then he passes out from his wounds. Jumping back into the past, we see that Aquaman arrives at the Navy base to see what these Navy soldiers are talking about, where he tells us that the artifact they found from ancient Atlantis is basically similar to an airplane black box. Remember, in our last video, Aquaman found an ancient Atlantis ship in the trenches, that this black box must have come from that ship. Except that is when some random soldiers, who of course don't belong to the Navy, attack the base. With that happening, the ancient Atlantis artifact lands in the hands of these new soldiers and they try to leave the Navy base. Of course, Aquaman begins the process of trying to stop these guys. When he catches up to them, we see that they have some kind of flying vehicle that Aquaman jumps on and starts to break everything apart in the vehicle. This explains how Aquaman had land in the middle of the desert. This takes us to the present day, where we see Aquaman waking up and being greeted by a mirage of his father, who of course it seems that he is going to have some kind of nice conversation with this mirage of his father. Except then the mirage begins to say some crazy things, really some hurtful things, where he is basically saying that Aquaman doesn't belong here, since he is technically half Atlantean, that he belongs in the ocean, not up here with the surface world. Either way, you have Aquaman begin to block out what the mirage is saying, and then begins to hear the Atlantean artifact still blaring out that high level pitch. So Aquaman uses his super hearing to lead him to find it somewhere, so he can just learn more about it. That is when we jump back one last time to tell us that right before Aquaman got pushed out or fell out of the airplane ship, while he was fighting against these random soldiers that came out of nowhere, that is when Aquaman realized that these soldiers are actually Atlanteans, and now makes Aquaman wonder why these Atlantean soldiers are so keen on getting this artifact. Remember, at this point in the New 52, Aquaman left Atlantis. This was early New 52, so we don't really know why he left Atlantis yet. We don't know who took his place. All we know is that these Atlanteans really want this artifact really bad. Finally, done with jumping back and forth between time, we see Aquaman finally finding the artifact that started all of this mess, where you have Aquaman put the Atlantean artifact into some water that came from one of the Atlantean soldiers. Remember, Aquaman said that this artifact is similar to a modern airplane black box. It has things recorded on there, and once he puts it in the water, of course, the hidden message plays, and it explains that the ship we saw Aquaman found in our last video basically was a ship of soldiers sent to go after someone who was hiding in the water, except when they got down there, they got stuck and attacked by the monsters from the trench. We saw Aquaman tell us in the last video that the way things look, they were killed by the trench monsters. You didn't have the message tell us that the enemy they were going after could have been the one to sink Atlantis all those years ago. Finally says the king and queen back then lied to the whole nation. Before we can learn more about everything this old message is trying to explain, that is when the message ends, because of course they were attacked by the monsters from the trench. Aquaman is also saved by the Navy, and they get him out of the desert and back home. When Aquaman gets back home, thinking that he is going to spend some downtime with his lady Mera, well, Mera left a note saying that she left to go on her own adventure to get their dog more food to eat. Remember, they got a dog in the last video, and we are going to explore that in the second half of this video, because it opened up a little bit more about the origin of Mera in the New 52 universe. Starting off the second chapter of this video, we see that 4 years ago, Mera was being trained for some kind of mission. Well, that mission was quickly told to us, and she was being trained to kill Aquaman, sounding like Aquaman was taking the throne all those years ago. Well, at the same time, she was being trained to kill him because her father, a king or a leader of another tribe that lives in the ocean, was worried about Aquaman coming after them and killing their tribe off. In the present day, we see Mera go to the store to go get that dog food. Before she walks into the store, we have the manager of the store being complete creep and trying to force one of his employees to do some favors that are completely wrong, where Mera does interrupt, asking for some dog food, except the manager begins to hit on Mera. He finds Mera attractive, but with him being complete jerk, he tries to touch her and make other different kinds of things to get close to her. Once he continues, well, Mera actually breaks this man's arm since he doesn't know how to act around a lady. Which, of course, with this man's arm being broken, it causes a whole scene in the middle of the store, where you have the police arrive at the scene too. Well, the security guard really arrives first, thinking that he actually has the ability to stop this whole thing until Mera begins to bend the water. Remember that Mera can control the water easily. It is not like she is still learning how to do it. No, she is basically a master of this. So these guys around her really don't stand a chance unless they shoot a bullet and it actually hits her. But then the actual police arrive at the scene. But of course, they can't do something to her. So it is just a big mess. Now, out of nowhere, over the radio, the police gets a call about how a prisoner they were transporting was able to escape and is holding his family hostage. The police are wondering if they should quickly handle Mera or deal with that first. you have Mera give up because then that would lead her and the police to the scene. So they put cuffs on her and they put her in the back of the police car. This is where we get to the whole point of the book. Well, this chapter to be more exact. That is Mera learning about what the human race is like. To her, she is trying to understand the human race more. Because when the police arrive at the scene, she of course breaks out of her cuffs and gets out of the car and stops the man who is holding his daughter as a hostage. This begins her lesson because she begins the process of killing this man, and she speaks about how no one is going to miss him because he already did things before he got arrested, but also killed his ex-wife before he took his daughter hostage. You have the daughter speak out and say even though her father is messed up, she does not want to see her father die, which confuses Mera, but it makes Mera leave because she has no idea what is going on in the girl's head. We then get back to Mera's origin story, where we see her go to some kind of cliff over the ocean, where she is thinking back to her life before Aquaman. Remember, she was sent to kill Aquaman right when he took the crown of Atlantis, except she did not follow through with the mission her father gave her. Instead, she just fell in love with Aquaman. But when she went back to tell her father that he was wrong about Aquaman, her father painted her as a traitor and then made his man attack his own daughter. Of course, we know that she was able to get away before he was about to kill her. Then in the middle of her daydreaming, she is greeted by the girl from the store, where she thanks Mera for actually breaking the arm of her manager because he was being a jerk and he was being a creep. She then gives Mera a bag of food to say thank you and to repay her for helping out. Remember, Mera came there to get food for the dog her and Aquaman just recently got. Now to close on this book, we see Mera meeting up with Aquaman to tell him that she was able to get the dog food for the dog. Except you have Aquaman telling her that it is time for him to learn who sank Atlantis. Remember that Atlantis used to be one of the most powerful nations in the world, except it was sunk into the ocean. So he says it is time for him to see Stephen Shin to see if maybe he knows. And this is where we are going to end today's video. So please hit that like button down below and also subscribe to the channel for more content to come in the near future. Also, any suggestions on books I should read, well, please let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But I do hope you enjoy today's video.